This is the story of Rostam and Sohrab from Shahnameh by Ferdowsi, translated by James Atkinson. O ye who dwell in youth's inviting bowers, waste not in useless joy your fleeting hours, but rather let the tears of sorrow roll, and sad reflection fill the conscious soul. For many a jocund spring has passed away, and many a flower has blossomed to decay, and human life, still hastening to a close, finds in the worthless dust its last repose. Still the vain world abounds in strife and hate, and sire and son provoke each other's fate, and kindred blood by kindred hand is shed, and vengeance sleeps not, dies not with the dead. All nature fades, the garden's treasures fall, young bud and citron ripe, all perish all. And now a tale of sorrow must be told, a tale of tears derived from Mobit old, and thus remembered with the dawn of day. Rostam arose, and wandering took his way, armed for the chase, where sloping to the sky Turan's lone wilds in sullen grandeur lie. There to dispel his melancholy mood, he urged his matchless steed through glen and wood. Flushed with the noble game which met his view, he starts the wild ass o'er the glistening dew, and oft exulting sees his quivering dart plunge through the glossy skin and pierce the heart. Tired of the sport, at length he sought the shade, which near a stream embowering trees displayed, and with his arrow's point a fire he raised, and thorns and grass before him quickly blazed. The severed parts upon the bough he cast, to catch the flames, and when the rich repast was dressed with flesh and marrow, savory food, he quelled his hunger, and the sparkling flood that murmured at his feet his thirst repressed. Then gentle sleep composed his limbs to rest. Meanwhile his horse, for speed and form renowned, ranged o'er the plain with flowery herbage crowned. Encumbering arms no more his sides oppressed, no folding mail confined his ample chest. Gallant and free he left the champion's side, and cropped the mead or sought the cooling tide, when lo, it chanced amid that woodland chase a band of horsemen rambling near the place saw with surprise superior game astray, and rushed at once to seize the noble prey. But in the imminent struggle too beneath, his steel-clad hooves received the stroke of death. Once proved a sterner fate, for downward borne the mangled head was from the shoulders torn. Still undismayed again they nimbly sprung, and round his neck the noose entangled flung. Now all in vain he spurns the smoking ground, in vain the tumult echoes all around. They bear him off, and view with ardent eyes his matchless beauty and majestic size, then soothe his fury, anxious to obtain a bounding steed of his immortal strain. When Rustum woke and missed his favourite horse, the loved companion of his glorious course, sorrowing he rose, and hastening thence began to shape his dubious way to Samangan. Reduced to journey thus alone, he said, how pierce the gloom which thickens round my head. Burthened on foot, and dreary waste in view, where shall I bend my steps, what path pursue? The scoffing Turks will cry, behold our might, we won the trophy from the champion knight. From him who, reckless of his fame and pride, thus idly slept, and thus ignobly died. Girding his loins he gathered from the field his quivered stores, his beamy sword and shield. Harness and saddle gear were o'er him slung, bridle and mail across his shoulders hung. Then looking round with anxious eye to meet the broad impression of his charger's feet, the track he hailed, and following onward pressed, while grief and hope alternate filled his breast. O'er vale and wildwood led he soon descries the regal city's shining turrets rise, and when the champion near his approach is known, the usual homage waits him to the throne. The king on foot received his welcome guest with proffered friendship, and his coming blessed. But Rustum frowned, and with resentment fired, spoke of his wrongs the plundering steed required. I've traced his footsteps to your royal town, here must he be, protected by your crown. But if retained, if not from fetters freed, my vengeance shall o'ertake this felon deed. My honored guest, the wondering king replied, shall Rustum once our wishes be denied? But let not anger, headlong, fierce, and blind, o'ercloud the virtues of a generous mind. If still within the limits of my reign, the well-known courser shall be thine again. For Rakush never can be remain concealed, no more than Rostam in the battlefield. Then cease to nourish useless rage, and share with joyous heart my hospitable fare. The son of Zulno felt his wrath subdued, and glad sensations in his soul renewed. The ready heralded by king's command, convened the chiefs and warriors of the land. And soon the banquet's social glee restored, and china wine cups glittered on the board. And cheerful song and music's magic power, and sparkling wine beguiled the festive hour. The dulcet draughts o'er Rustum's senses stole, and melting strains absorbed his softened soul. But when approached the period of repose, all prompt and mindful from the banquet rose. A couch was spread well worthy of such a guest, perfumed with rose and musk, and whilst at rest, in deep sound sleep the wearied champion lay, forgot were all the sorrows of the way. One watch had passed, and still sweet slumber shed its magic power around the hero's head, when forth Tamineh came, a damsel held an amber taper which the gloom dispelled, and near his pillow stood in beauty bright a monarch's daughter, struck with his wondrous sight. Clear as the moon, in glowing charms arrayed, her winning eyes the light of heaven displayed. Her cypress form entranced the gazer's view, her waving curls the heart resistless drew. Her eyebrows like the archer's bended bow, her ringlets snares, her cheeks the rose's glow. Mixed with the lily from her ear-tips hung, rich rings rich and glittering, star-like, and her tongue, and lips all sugared sweetness, pearls the while, sparkled within a mouth formed to beguile. Her presence dimmed the stars, and breathing round fragrance and joy, she scarcely touched the ground. So light her step, so graceful every part, perfect and suited to her spotless heart. Rustam surprised the gentle maid addressed, and asked what lovely stranger broke his rest. What is thy name, he said, and what dost thou seek? Amid the gloom of night fair visions speak. O thou, she softly sighed, of matchless fame, with pity hear, Tamineh is my name. The pangs of love my anxious heart employ, and flattered promise long expected joy. No curious eye has yet these features seen, my voice unheard beyond the sacred screen. How often have I listened with amaze to thy great deeds, enamored of thy praise. How oft from every tongue I've heard the strain, and thought of thee, and sighed again. The ravenous eagle, hovering o'er his prey, starts at thy gleaming sword and flies away. Thou art the slayer of the demon brood, and the fierce monsters of this echoing wood. Where'er thy mace is seen, shrink back the bold, the javelin's flash all tremble to behold. Enchanted with the stories of thy fame, my fluttering heart responded to thy name, and whilst the magic influence I felt, in prayer for thee devotedly I knelt, and fervent vowed, lest powerful glory charms, no other spouse should bless my longing arms. Indulgent heaven, propitious to my prayer, now brings thee hither to reward my care. Turan's dominion thou hast sought alone, by night and darkness, thou the mighty one. O claim my hand and grant my soul's desire, ask me in marriage of my royal sire. Perhaps a boy our wedded love may crown, whose strength like thine may gain the world's renown. Nay more, for Samangan will keep my word, Rakush to thee again shall be restored. The damsel thus her ardent thought expressed, and Rustum's heart beat joyous in his breast. Hearing her passion not a word was lost, and Rakush safe by him still valued most. He called her near, with graceful step she came, and marked with throbbing pulse his kindled flame. And now a mobed from the champion knight request the royal sanction to the rite. O'erjoyed the king the honoured suit approves, o'erjoyed to bless the doting child he loves, and happier still in showering smiles around, to be allied to warrior so renowned. When the delighted father, doubly blessed, resigned his daughter to his glorious guest, the people shared the gladness which it gave, the union of the beauteous and the brave. To grace their nuptial day, both old and young, the hymeneal gratulations sung. May this young moon bring happiness and joy, and every source of enmity destroy. The marriage bower received the happy pair, and love transported showered their blessings there. Ere from his lofty sphere the morn had thrown his glittering radiance, and in splendor shone. The mindful champion from his sinewy arm the bracelet drew, the soul ennobling charm. And as he held this wondrous gift with pride, he thus addressed his love-devoted bride. Take this, he said, and if by gracious heaven a daughter for thy solace should be given, let it among her ringlets be displayed, and joy and honor will await the maid. But should kind fate increase the nuptial joy, and make thee mother of a blooming boy, around his arm the magic bracelet bind, to fire with virtuous deeds his ripening mind. The strength of psalm will nerve his manly form, in temper mild and valor like the storm. His not the dastard fate to shrink or turn from where the lions of the battle burn. To him the soaring eagle from the sky will stoop, the bravest yield to him or fly. Thus shall the bright career imperious claim the well-won honors of immortal fame. Ardent he said, and kissed her eyes and face, and lingering held her in a fond embrace, when the bright sun his radiant brow displayed, and earth in all its loveliest hues arrayed. The champion rose to leave his spouse's side, the warm affections of his weeping bride. For her too soon the winged moments flew, too soon, alas, the parting hour she knew. Clasped in his arms with many a streaming tear, she tried in vain to win his deafened ear, still tried a fruitless struggle to impart the swelling anguish of her bursting heart. The father now with gratulations due, Rostam approaches and displays to view the fiery war-horse welcome as the light of heaven who one immersed in deepest night. The champion wild with joy fits on the rein, and girds the saddle on his back again. Then mounts, and leaving sire and wife behind, onwards to Shushan's rushes like the wind. But when we returned to Zabul's friendly shade, none knew what joys the warrior had delayed. Still fond remembrance with enduring thought oft to his mind the scene of rapture brought. When 9 slow circling months had rolled away, sweet smiling pleasure hailed the brightening day. A wondrous boy Tamineh's tears suppressed, and lulled the sorrows of her heart to rest. To him predestined to be great and brave, the name of Sohrab his tender mother gave. And as he drew amazed in gathering throng, viewed his large limbs, his sinews firm and strong, his infant years no soft endearment claimed, athletic sports his eager soul inflamed. Broad at the chest and taper round the loins, where to the rising hip the body joins, hunter and wrestler, and so great his speed, he could overtake and hold the swiftest steed. His noble aspect and majestic grace betrayed the offspring of a glorious race, how with a mother's ever anxious love, still to retain him near, the heart she strove. For when the father's fond inquiry came, cautious she still concealed his birth and name, and feigned a daughter born the evil fraught, with misery to avert it, but vain the thought. Not many years had passed with downing flight, ere he, Tamineh's wonder and delight, with glistening eye and youthful ardor warm, filled her foreboding bosom with alarm. "O now relieve my heart," she said, "declare from whom I sprang and breathed the vital air, since from childhood I have e'er been amidst my playmates of superior mien. Should friend or foe demand my father's name, let not my silence testify my shame. If still concealed you falter, still delay, a mother's blood shall wash the crime away." "This wrath forego," the mother answered, cried, "and joyful hear to whom thou art allied. A glorious line precedes thy destined birth, the mightiest heroes of the sons of earth. The deeds of some remotest realms admire, and Zal and Rostam thy illustrious sire." In private then she Rostam's letter placed before his view, and brought with eager haste 3 sparkling rubies, wedges 3 of gold, from Persia sent. Behold, she said, behold, thy father's gifts will these thy doubts remove, the costly pledges of paternal love. Behold this braceful charm of sovereign power, to baffle fate in dangerous awful hour. But thou must still the perilous secret keep, nor ask the harvest of renown to reap. For when by this peculiar signet known, thy glorious father shall demand his son, doomed from her only joy in life to part, O think what pangs will rend thy mother's heart. Seek not the fame which only teems with woe. Afrasiab is Rostam's deadless foe, and if by him discovered him I dread, revenge will fall upon thy guiltless head. The youth replied, in vain thy sighs and tears, the secret breathes and mocks thy idle fears. No human power can fate's decrees control, or check the kindled ardor of my soul. Then why from me the bursting truth conceal? My father's foes even now my vengeance feel. Even now in wrath my native legions rise, and sounds of desolation strike the skies. Kush himself, hurled from his ivory throne, shall yield to Rostam the imperial crown. And thou, my mother, still in triumph seen, of lovely Persia hailed the honoured queen. Then shall Turan unite beneath my hand, and drive this proud oppressor from the land. Father and son in virtuous league combined, no savage despot shall enslave mankind. When sun and moon o'er heaven refulgent blaze, shall little stars obtrude their feeble rays? He pauses, then, O mother, I must now my father seek and see his lofty brow. Be mine a horse such as a prince demands, fit for the dusty field, a warrior's hands. Strong as an elephant his form should be, and chested like the stag in motion free. And swift as bird or fish it would disgrace a warrior bold on foot to show his face. The mother, seeing how his heart was bent, his day star rising in the firmament, commands the stables to be searched to find, among the steeds one suited to his mind. Pressing their backs he tries in strength and nerve, bent double to the ground their bellies curve. Not one from neighbouring plain and mountain brought equals the wish with which his soul is fraught. Fruitless on every side he anxious turns, fruitless his brain with wild impatience burns. But when at length they bring the distant steed, from Rakush bred of lightning's winged speed, fleet as the arrow from the bowstring flies, fleet as the eagle darting through the skies, rejoiced he springs, and with a nimble bound vaults in his seat, and wheels the courser round. With such a horse thus mounted, what remains? Kush the Persian king no longer reigns. High flushed he speaks, with youthful pride elate, eager to crush the monarch's glittering state. He grasps his javelin with a hero's might, and pants with ardor for the field of fight. Soon o'er the realm his fame expanding spread, and gathering thousands hastened to his aid. His grandsire pleased beheld the warrior train, successive throng and darken all the plain, and bounteously his treasures he supplied, camels and steeds and gold and martial pride. Sohrab was seen, a Grecian helmet graced, his brow and costless mail his limbs embraced. Afrasiab now hears with ardent joy the bold ambition of the warrior boy, of him who perfumed with the milky breath of infancy was threatening war and death, and bursting sudden from his mother's side, had launched his bark upon the perilous tide. The insidious king sees well the tempting hour, favouring his arms against the Persian power, and thence in haste the enterprise to share. 12,000 veterans selects with care. To Haman and Bahman the charge consigns, and thus this force with Samangan combines. But treacherous first his martial chiefs he pressed, to keep the secret fast within their breast. For this bold youth must not his father know. Each must confront the other as his foe. Such is my vengeance, with unhallowed rage. Father and son shall dreadful battle wage. Unknown the youth shall Rustum's force withstand, and soon o'erwhelmed the bulwark of the land. Rostam removed the Persian throne Azars, an easy conquest to confederate powers, and then, secured by some propitious snare, Sohrab himself our galling bonds shall wear. Or should the son by Rustam's falchion bleed, the father's horror at that fatal deed will rend his soul, and midst his sacred grief, curse in vain will supplicate relief. The tutored chiefs advance with speed and bring imperial presents to the future king. In stately pomp the embassy proceeds, 10 loaded camels, 10 unrivaled steeds. A golden crown and throne whose jewels bright gleam in the sun and shed a sparkling light. A letter to the crafty tyrant sends, and fraudulentful thus the glorious aim commends. Persia's spoils invite thee to the field. Accept the aid my conquering legions yield. Led by 2 chiefs of valor and renown, upon thy head to place thy kingly crown. Elate with promised fame, the youth surveys the regal vest, the throne's radiant blaze, the golden crown, the steeds, the sumptuous load of 10 strong camels craftily bestowed. Salutes the chiefs and views on every side the lengthening ranks with various arms supplied. The march begins, the brazen drums resound, his moving thousands hide the trembling ground. For Persia's verdant land he wields the spear, and blood and havoc mark his groaning rear. To check the invader's horror, the spreading course, the barrier fort opposed with unequal force, that fort whose walls extending wide contained the stay of Persia to battle, men to battle trained. As soon as Huzur the dusky crowd descried, he on his own presumptuous arm replied, and left the fort in mail with shield and spear. Vaunting he spoke, what hostile force is here? What chieftain dares our warlike realms invade? And who art thou? Sohrab indignant said. Rushing towards him with undaunted look, hast thou audacious nerve and soul to brook the crocodile in fight that to the strife singly thou comest, reckless of thy life? To this the foe replied, a Turk and I have never yet been bound in friendly tie, and soon thy head shall severed by my sword gladden the sight of Persia's mighty lord. While thy torn limbs to vultures shall be given, or bleach beneath the parching blast of heaven, the useful hero laughs and hears the boast, and now by each continual spears are tossed, mingling together like a flood of fire. The boaster meets his adversary's ire. The horse on which he rides with thundering pace seems like a mountain moving from its base. Sternly he seeks the stripling loins to wound, but the lance hurtless drops against the ground. Sohrab advancing hurls his steady spear full on the middle of the vain Huzur, who staggers in his seat with proud disdain. The youth now flings him headlong on the plain, and quick dismounting on his heaving breast, triumphant stands, his crooner firmly pressed, to strike the head off, but the blow was stayed. Trembling for life, the craven boaster prayed that mercy granted ease his coward mind, through dire disgrace in captive bonds confined, and sent him to Haman, who amazed beheld how soon Sohrab his daring soul had quelled. When Gerda freed, a peerless warrior dame, heard of the conflict and the hero's shame, groans heaved her breast, and tears of anger flowed, her tulip cheek with deeper crimson glowed. Speedful in arms magnificent arrayed, a foaming palfrey bore the martial maid. The burnished mail her tender limbs embraced, beneath her helm her clustering locks she placed. Poised in her hand an iron javelin gleamed, and o'er the ground its sparkling lustre streamed. Accounted thus in manly guise no eye, however piercing, could her sex descry. Now like a lion from the fort she bends, and midst the foe impetuously descends. Fearless of soul, demands with haughty tone that bravest chief for warlike valor known, to try the chance of flight in shining arms. Again Sohrab the glow of battle warms. With scornful smiles, another deer, he cries. Come to, my victor toils another prize. The damsel saw his noose in shidges spread, and soon her arrows whizzed around his head. With steady skill the twanging bow she drew, and still her pointed darts unerring flew. From when in the forest sports she touched the string, never escaped even bird upon the wing. Furious he burned, and high his buckler held, to ward the storm by growing force impelled, and tilted forward with augmented wrath, but Gerda Friedrich aspires to cross his path. Now o'er her back the slackened bow resounds, she grasps her lance, her goaded courser bounds. Driven on the youth with persevering might, unconquered courage still prolongs the fight. The stripling chief shields off the threatened blow, reins in his steed, then rushes on the foe. With outstretched arm he bending backwards hung, and gathering strength his pointed javelin flung. Firm through her girdle belt the weapon went, and glancing down the polished armor rent. Staggering and stunned by his superior force, she almost tumbled from her foaming horse. Yet unsubdued, she cut their spear in two, and from her side her quivering fragment drew. Then gained her seat and onward urged her steed, but strong and fleet Sohrab arrests her speed. Strikes off her helm and sees a woman's face, radiant with blushes and commanding grace. Thus undeceived, in admiration lost, he cries, "A woman from the Persian host! If Persian damsels thus in arms engage, who shall repel the warrior's fiercer rage?" Then from his saddle thong his noose he drew, and round her waist the twisted loop he threw. "Now seek not to escape," he sharply said, "such is the fate of war unthinking maid, and as such beauty seldom swells her pride, vain thy attempt to cast my toils aside. In this extreme but one resource remained, one remedy her hope sustained. In expert wiles each siren art she knew, and thence exposed her blooming face to view. Raising her full black orbs serenely bright, in all her charms she blazed before his sight, and thus addressed Sohrab: "Warrior brave, hear me and thy imperiled honor save. These curling tresses seen by either host, a woman conquered whence the glorious boast. Thy startled troops will know with inward grief a woman's arm resist their towering chief. Better preserve the warrior fair renown, and let our struggle still remain unknown. For whom hath wanton folly would expose a helpless maid to aggravate her woes? The fort, the treasure shall thy toils repay, the chief and garrison thy will obey, and thine the honors of this dreadful day." Should he gazed, her smiles resistless move, the wildest transports of ungoverned love. Her face to undisclosed, a paradise to view, eyes like the fawn, and cheeks of rosy hue. Thus vanquished, lost, unconscious of her aim, and only struggling with his amorous flame, he rose behind as if compelled by fate, and heedless saw her gain the castle gate. Safe with her friends, escaped from brand and spear, smiling she stands, as if unknown to fear. The father now, with tearful pleasure wild, clasps to his heart his fondly fostered child. The crowding warriors round her eager bend, and grateful prayers to favoring heaven ascend. Now from the walls she with majestic air exclaims, "The warrior of Tehran forbear, why vex thy soul, and useless strife demand? Go in peace, enjoy their native land." Stern he rejoins, "Thou beauteous tyrants say, though crowned with charms devoted to betray, when these proud walls in dust and ruins laid yield no defence, and thou a captive maid, will not repentance through thy bosom dart, and sorrow soften that disdainful heart?" Quick she replied, "O'er Persia's fertile fields the savage Turk in vain his falcon wields. When King Kostus bold invasion hears, and mighty Rostam clad in arms appears, destruction wide will glut the slippery plain, and not one man of all thy host remain. Alas, that bravery high as thine should meet amid such promise with a sure defeat! But not a gleam of hope remains for thee, thy wondrous valor cannot keep thee free. Avert the fate which o'er thy head impends. Return, and save thy martial friends." Thus to be scorned, defrauded of his prey, with victory in his grasp to lose the day, shame and revenge alternate filled his mind. The suburb town to pillage he consigned, and devastation not a dwelling spared, the very owls from her covert scared. Then thus, though luckless in my aim today, tomorrow shall behold a sterner fray. This fort in ashes scattered o'er the plain, he ceased and turned towards his troops again. There at a distance from the hostile power, he brooding waits the slaughter-breathing hour. Sire of Godofred, who now governed the fort, and fearful the warrior's vow, mournful and pale, with gathering woes oppressed, his distant monarch trembling thus addressed. But first invoked the heavenly power to shed its choicest blessings o'er his royal head. Against our realm, with numerous foot and horse, a stripling warrior holds his ruthless course. His lion breast unequalled strength betrays, and o'er his mien the sun's effulgence plays. Sohrab his name, like Samsuar he shows, or Rostam's terrible amidst his foes. The bold Hujr lies vanquished on the plain, and drags a captive's ignominious chain. Myriads of troops besiege our tottering wall, and vain effort to suspend his fall. Haste for arm for fight, this Tartar power withstand. Let sweeping vengeance lift her flickering brand. Rostam alone may stem the roaring wave, and prompt and as bold his groaning country save. Meanwhile, in flight we place our only trust, ere the proud ramparts crumble in the dust. Swift flies the messenger through secret ways, and to the king the dreadful tale conveys. Then past unseen in night's concealing shade, the mournful heroes and the warrior maid. Soon as the sun with vivifying ray gleams o'er the landscape and renews the day, the flaming troops the lofty walls surround. With thundering crash the bursting gates resound. Already at the captives bound in thought, and like a herd before the conqueror brought. Sohrab, terrific o'er the ruin views, his hopes deceived, but restless still pursues. An empty fortress mocks his searching eye. No steel-clad chiefs his burning wrath defy. No warrior maid reviving passion warms, and soothes his breast with fondly valued charms. Deep in his breast he feels a more smart, and hugs her image closer to his heart. Alas, that fate should invidious shroud the moon's soft radiance in a gloomy cloud, should to my eyes such winning grace display, then snatch the enchanter of my soul away. A beauteous roe my toils enclosed in vain. Now I, her victim, drag the captive's chain. Strange the effects that from her charms proceed. I gave the wound, and I afflicted bleed. Vanquished by her I mourn the luckless strife. Dark, dark and bitter frowns my morn of life. A fair unknown my tortured bosom rends, withers each joy and every hope suspends. Impassioned thus, Sohrab in secret sighed, and sought in vain o'er mastering grief to hide. Can the heart bleed and throb from day to day, and yet no trace of its inmost pangs betray? Love scorns control and prompts the labouring sigh, pales the red lip and dims the lucid eye. His look alarmed the stern Turanian chief. Closely he marked his heart-corroding grief, and though he knew not that his martial dame had in his bosom lit the tender flame, full well he knew such deep repinings prove the hapless thraldom of disastrous love. Full well he knew some idol's musky hair had to his youthful heart become a snare, but still unnoted was the gushing tear, till haply it had gained his private ear. In ancient times no hero known to fame, not dead to glory, e'er indulged the flame. Though beauty's smiles might charm a fleeting hour, the heart unswayed repelled their lasting power. A warrior chief to trembling love a prey, what, weep for woman won in glorious day? Can thou, for love's effeminate control, barter the glory of a warrior's soul? Although 100 damsels might be gained, the hero's heart shall still be free unchained. Thou art our leader, and thy place the field, where soldiers love to fight with spear and shield. And what hast thou to do with tears and smiles, thou silly victim to a woman's wiles? Our progress mark, from far Tehran we came, through seas of blood to gain immortal fame. And wilt thou now the tempting conquest shun, when our brave arms this barrier fort have won? Why linger here that trickling sorrows shed, till mighty Kaus thunders o'er thy head? Till Tus and Gu and Gurraz and Bahram and Rustam brave, Fermoz and Ureham, shall aid the war, a great enterprise as thine. At once then every other thought resign, for know the task which first inspired zeal transcends in glory all that love can feel. Rise and lead the war, prodigious toils require unyielding strength and unextinguished fire. Pursue the triumph with tempestuous rage, against the world in glorious strife engage, and when an empire sinks beneath the sway, O quickly may we hail the prosperous day. The fickle sex then with the blooming charms, adoring throng to bless thy circling arms. Hurman's warm speech with a glorious stirring theme awoke Sohrab from his inglorious dream. No more the tear his faded cheek bedewed, again ambition all his hopes renewed. Swell his bold heart with unforgotten zeal, the noble wrath with which heroes only feel. Fiercely he vowed at one tremendous stroke to bow the world beneath his tyrant's yoke. Afrasiab, he cried, shall reign alone, the mighty lord of Persia's gorgeous throne, burning himself to rule this nether sphere. These welcome tidings charmed the despot's ear. Meantime Kos, this Tyre invasion known, had called his chiefs around his ivory throne. There stood Gurgan and Bahram and Gushwad, and Tush and Gu and Gurraz and Ferhad. To them he read this melancholy tale Rustam had written of the rising bale, besought their aid and prudent choice to form some sure defence against the threatening storm. In consent they urged the strong request to summon Rustam from his rural rest. Instant a warrior delegate they send, and thus the king invites his patriot friend. To thee all praise, whose mighty arm alone preserves the glory of the Persian throne. Lo Tartar hordes our happy realms invade, the tottering state requires thy powerful aid. A youthful champion leads the ruthless host, his savage country wildly rumored boast. The barrier fortress sinks beneath the sway, Hujr is vanquished, ruin tracks his way. Strong as a raging elephant in fight, no harm but thine can match his furious might. Mazandaran thy conquering prowess knew, the demon king thy trenchant falcon slew. The rolling heavens, abashed with fear, behold thy biting sword, thy mace adorned with gold. Fly to the succor of a king distressed, proud of thy love, with thy protection blessed. When o'er the nation dread misfortunes lower, thou art the refuge, thou the saving power. The chiefs assembled claim thy patriot vows, give to thy glory all that life allows. And when no whisper breathes the direful tale, O let thy monarch's anxious prayers avail. Closing the fragrant page, o'ercome with dread, the afflicted king to Gu the warrior said, Go bind the saddle of thy fleetest horse, outstrip the tempest in thy rapid course. To Rustam swift his country woes convey, too true art thou to linger on the way. Speed day and night, and not one instant wait, whate'er hour may bring thee to his gate. Followed no pause to Gu, enough was said, nor rest nor taste of food his speed delayed. And when arrived where Zabal's powers exhale, ambrosial sweets and scent the balmy gale, the sentinel's loud voice in Rustam's ear announced a messenger from Persia near. The chief himself amid the warriors stood, dispensing honors to the brave and good. And soon as Gu had joined the martial ring, the sacred envoy of the Persian king, he with becoming loyalty inspired, asked what the monarch, what his state required. Gu apart his secret mission told, the written page was speedily unrolled. Struck with amazement Rustam, now on earth a warrior knight of psalms excelling worth? Whence comes this hero of the prosperous star? I know no Turk renowned like him in war. He bears the mort of Rustam too, 'tis said. like Sohrab, a warrior bred. He cannot be my son unknown to me. Reason forbids the thought, it cannot be. And Samangan, where once affection smiled, to me Tamineh bore her only child. That was a daughter. Pondering thus he spoke, and then aloud, why fear the invader's yoke? Why trembling shrink, by coward thoughts dismayed? Must we all come in dust at length be laid? But come to Nahman's palace with haste with me, and there partake the feast from sorrow free. Breathe but a while, ere we our toils renew, and moisten the parched lip with needful dew. Let plans of war another day decide. We soon shall quell this hero's youthful pride. The force of fire soon flutters and decays. When ocean swells by storms its wrath displays. What danger threatens once the dastard fear, rest at leisure shed a warrior's cheer. In vain the envoy pressed the monarch's grief, the matchless prowess of the stripling chief. How brave Hoosier had felt his furious hand, what thickening woes beset the shuddering land. But Rostam still delayed the parting day, and mirth and feasting rolled the hours away. Morn following morn beheld the banquet bright, music and wine prolonged the genial rite. Wrapped by the witchery of the melting strain, no thought of Kush touched his swimming brain. The trumpet clang on fragrant breezes borne, now loud salutes the fifth revolving morn. The softer tones which charmed the jocund feast, and all the noise of revelry had ceased. The generous horse in rich embroidery decked, whose gilded trappings sparkling light reflect, bears with the majestic port the champion brave, and high in air the victor banners wave. Prompted at the martial calls, Sohrab leads his veterans troops from Zabal's verdant meads. Ere Rostam had approached his journey's end, two Skurdars Gurwad met their champion friend, with customary honors pleased to bring the shield of Persia to the anxious king. But foaming wrath the senseless monarch swayed, his friendship scorned, his mandate disobeyed. Beneath dark brows, o'ershadowing deep his eye, red gleaming shone like lightning through the sky. And when the warrior met his sullen view, frowning revenge still more enraged he grew. Loud to the envoy thus he fiercely cried, Since Rustam has my royal power defied, had I a sword, this instant should his head roll on the ground, but let him now be led hence and impaled alive. Astounded Gu shrunk from such treatment of a knight so true, but this resistance added to the flame, and both were branded with revolt and shame. Both were condemned, and to the stern decree received to break them on the felon tree. Could daring insult, thus deliberate given, escape the rage of one so frenzy driven? No, from the side the nerveless chief was flung, bent to the ground, away the champion sprung, mounted his foaming horse, and looking round, his boiling wrath this rapid utterance found. Ungrateful king, thy tyrant acts disgrace the sacred throne and more the human race. Midst clashing swords thy recreant life I saved, and I am now by Tus contemptuous braved. On me thus Tus shall Kush dare to frown, on me the bulwark of the regnal crown. Wherefore should fear in Rustam's breast have birth? Kush to me a worthless clod of earth. Go and thyself Sohrab's invasion stay, go seize the plunderers growling o'er the prey. Wherefore to others give the base command, go break him on the tree with thine own hand. Know thou hast roused a warrior great and free, who never bends to tyrant kings like thee. Was not this untired arm triumphant seen in Mizoram, Mazindaran, and Chin? And must I shrink at thy imperious nod? Slave to no prince, I only bow to God. Whatever wrath from thee, proud king, may fall, for thee I fought, and I deserve it all. The regal sceptre might have graced my hand, I kept the laws and scorned supreme command. When Kai Kavod and Elber's mountains strayed, I drew him thence and gave a warrior's aid. Placed in his brows the long contested crown, worn by his sires, by sacred right his own. Strong in the cause my conquering arms prevailed. Wouldst thou have reigned had Rustam's valor failed? When the white demon raged in battle fray, would thou hast lived had Rustam lost the day? Then to his friends, be wise and shun your fate. Fly to the wide ruin which overwhelms the state. The conquering comes, the scourge of great and small, and vultures following fast will gorge on all. Persia no more his conquering chief shall view, he said, and sternly from the court withdrew. The warriors now with sad forbearings wrung, torn from the hope that which they proudly clung, on Gurdo's rest to soothe with gentle sway the frantic king and Rustam's wrath allay. With bitter grief they wail misfortune's shock, no shepherd now to guard the timorous flock. Gurdars at length with boding cares impressed, thus soothed the anger of the royal breast. Say, what has Rustam done that he should be impaled upon that ignominious tree? Degrading thought, unworthy to be bred within a royal heart, a royal head. Hast thou forgot when near the Caspian wave defeat and ruin hath appalled the brave, when mighty Rustam struck the dreadful blow and nobly freed thee from the savage foe? Did demons huge escape his flaming brand, their reeking limbs bestrewed the slippery sand? Shall he from this resign his vital breath? What shall the hero's recompense be? Death? But who will dare a threatening step advance? What earthly power can bear his withering glance? Should he to Zabul fired with wrongs return, the plundered land will long in sorrow mourn. This direful presage all our warriors feel, for who can now oppose invaders' steel? Thus the wise thy champion to offend, to urge this extreme warrior friend. Remember passion ever scorns control, and wisdom's mild decrees should rule a monarch's soul. Gauss, relenting, heard with anxious ear, and groundless wrath gave place to shame and fear. Go then, he cried, his generous aid implore, and to your king the mighty chief restore. When Gurdaus rose and seized his courser's rein, a crowd of horses followed in his train. To Rustam now respectful homage paid, the royal prayer he anxious thus conveyed. The king repentant seeks thy aid again, grieved to the heart that he has given thee pain. But though his anger was unjust and strong, thy country still is guiltless of the wrong, and therefore why abandoned thus by thee? Thy help the king himself implores through me. Rustam rejoined, unworthy that presence and scorn and insult and all my recompense. Must I be galled by his capricious mood, I who have still his firmest champion stood? But all his past to heaven alone resigned, no human cares shall more disturb my mind. Then Gurdos thus, consummate art inspired, his prudent tongue with all that zeal required. When Rustam dreads Sohrab's resistless power, will may and furious fly the trying hour. Thy dire suspicion now pervades us all, thus unavenged shall beauteous Persia fall. Yet generous still avert thy lasting shame, O still preserve thy country's glorious fame. Or wilt thou, deaf to all our fears excite, forsake thy friends, and shun the pending fight? And were so grief in thy declining days forfeit the honours of thy country's praise, this artful censure set his soul on fire, but patriot firmness calmed his burning ire. And thus he said, injured to war's alarms, did ever Rustam shun the din of arms? Though frowns from Kos I dare disdain, my threatening country claims a warrior's care. He ceased, and prudent joined the circling throng, and public good forgot the private wrong. Far from the king the generous champion viewed, and rising mildly thus his speech pursued. Since various tempers govern all mankind, me nature fashioned of a froward mind, and what the heavens spontaneously bestow, sown by their bounty, must forever grow. The fit of wrath which burst within me soon shrunk up my heart as thin as the new moon. Else had I deemed thee still my army's boast, source of my regal power, beloved the most, unequalled. Every day remembering thee, I drank the wine cup. Thou art all to me. I wished thee to perform that lofty part, claimed by thy valor, sanctioned by my heart. Hence thy delay my better thoughts suppressed, and boisterous passions revealed in my breast. But when I saw thee from my court retire, in wrath repentance quenched my burning ire. O let me now my keen contrition prove, again enjoy thy fellowship and love. And well to thee my gratitude is known, still be the pride and glory of my throne. Rostam thus answering said, Thou art the king, source of command, pure honor's sacred spring. And here I stand to follow thy behest, obedient ever be thy will expressed. And service is required old age shall see, my loins still bound in fealty to thee, to this the king. Rejoice we then today, and on the morrow marshal our array. The monarch quick commands the feast of joy, and social cares his buoyant mind employ. With a bower beside the crystal spring, where opening flowers refreshing odors fling, cheerful he sits, and forms the banquet scene, in regal splendor on the crowned green. And as around he greets his valiant bands, showers golden presents from his bounteous hands. Voluptuous damsels trill the sportive lay, whose sparkling glances beam celestial day. Filled with the delight, the heroes closer join, and quaff till midnight cups of generous wine. Soon as the sun had pierced the veil of night, and o'er the prospect shed his earliest light, Cause impatient bids the clarion sound, the sprightly notes from hills and rocks rebound. His treasure gates are opened unto all, a largest given, obedient to the call. His subjects gathering crowd the mountain's brow, and following thousands shade the vales below. With shields and armor numerous legions bend, and troops of horse and threatening lines extend. Beneath the thread of heroes fierce and strong, by war's tumultuous fury borne along, the firm earth shook, the dust in eddies driven, whirled high in the air, obscured the face of heaven. Nor earth nor sky appeared, all seeming lost, and swallowed up by that wide-spreading host. The steely armor glittered o'er the fields, and lightning flashed from the golden blazoned shields. Thou wouldst have said the clouds had burst in showers of speaking amber o'er the martial powers. Thus close embodied they pursued their way, and reached the barrier fort in terrible array. The legions of Tehran with dreaded surprise saw o'er the plain successive myriads rise, and showed them to Sohrab. He mounting high the fort surveyed them with a fearless eye. To Haman, who with withering terror pale had marked their progress through the distant vale, he pointed out the sight and art, and said, Dispel these woe-fraught broodings from thy head. I wage the war of Freshab for thee, and make this desert seem a rolling sea. Thus while amazement every bosom quelled, Sohrab unmoved the coming storm beheld, and boldly gazing on the camp around, raised high the cup with wine nectarous crowned. O'er him no dreams of woe insidious stole, no thoughts but joy engaged his ardent soul. The Persian legions had restrained their course, the tents and pavilions, countless foot and horse, clothed all the spacious plain, and gleaming through terrific splendors on the gazer's view. The sun had faded in the west, and night assumed her ebon-colored vest. The mighty chief approached to the sacred throne, and generous thus made danger all his own. The rules of war demand a previous task. To watch this dreadful foe I boldly ask. With wary steps the wondrous youth to view, and mark the heroes who his path pursue. The king assents. That task is justly thine. Favorite of heaven, inspired by power divine, in Turkish habit, secretly arrayed, the lurking champion wandering through the shade, and cautious standing near the palace gate, saw how the chiefs were ranged in princely state. What time Sohrab his thoughts to battle turned, and for the first proud fruits of conquest burned, his mother called a warrior to his aid, and Zinda Rostam his sister called obeyed. To him Tamineh gave her only joy, and bade him shield the bold adventurous boy. But in the dreadful strife should danger rise, present my child before his father's eyes. By him protected, war may rage in vain, though he may never bless these arms again. The guardian prince sat on the stripling's right, viewing the imperial banquet with delight. Uman and Bahman near the hero placed, in joyous pomp the full assembly graced. 100 valiant chiefs begirt the throne, and all elate were chanting his renown. Closely concealed the gay and splendid scene, Rustum contemplates with astonished mien, when Zin retiring marks the listener nigh, watching the festal train with curious eye, and well he knew, amongst his Tartar host, such towering stature not a chief could boast. What spy is here, close shrouded by the night? Art thou afraid to face the beams of light? But scarcely from his lips these words had passed, ere fell to the earth he groaning breathed his last. Unseen he perished, fate decreed the blow, to add fresh keenness to a parent's woe. Meantime Sohrab, perceiving the delay in Zin's return, looked round him with dismay. The seat still vacant, but the bitter truth full soon was known to the distracted youth. Full soon he found that Rostam was gone, his day of feasting and of glory done. Speedful towards the fatal spot he ran, where slept in bloody vest and slaughtered man. The lighted torches now displayed the dead, stiff on the ground his graceful limbs were spread. Sad sight to him who knew his guardian care, now doomed a kinsman early lost to bear. Anguish and rage devour his breast by turns, he vows revenge, then o'er the warrior mourns, and thus exclaims to each afflicted chief, No time tonight, my friends, for useless grief. The ravenous wolf has watched his helpless prey, sprung o'er the fold, and borne his flower away. But if the heaven my lifted arms befriend, upon the guilty shall my wrath descend. Unsheathed this sword shall dire revenge pursue, and Persian blood the thirsty land bedew. Frowning he paused, and checked the spreading woe, resumed the feast, and bid the wine-cup flow. The valiant Gu was sentinel that night, and marking dimly by the dubious light, a warrior form approached. He claps his hands, with naked sword in lifted shield he stands, to front the foe. But Rustum now appears, and Gu the secret tale astonished hears. From thence the champion on the monarch waits, the power and splendor of Sohrab relates. Circled by chiefs, this glorious youth was seen, of lofty stature and majestic mien. No Tartar region gave the hero birth, some happier portion of the spacious earth. Tall as the graceful cypress he appears, like Psalm the brave his warrior front he rears. Then having told how well the banquet shone, unhappy Zin had sunk without a groan. He formed his conquering bands in close array, and cheered by wine awaits the coming day. When now the sun his golden buckler raised, and genial light through heaven diffusive blazed, Sohrab in mail his nervous limbs attired, for dreadful wrath his soul to vengeance fired. With anxious haste he bent his yielding cord, ring with ring, more fateful than the sword. Around his brows a regal helm he bound, his dappled steed impatient stamped the ground. Thus armed, ascending where the eye could trace the hostile force and mark each leader's place, he called Hujur, the captive chief addressed, and anxious thus his sole desire expressed. A prisoner thou, if freedom's voice can charm, and dungeon darkness fill thee with alarm, that freedom merits shun the severest woe, and truly answer what I wish to know. If rigid truth thy ready speech attend, honours and wealth shall dignify my friend. Obedient to thy wish, Hujr replied, truth, and thou shalt hear whatever chance betide. For what on earth to praise has better claim? Falsehood but leads to sorrow and to shame. Then say what heroes lead the adverse host, where they command, what dignities they boast. Say where does coast his kingly state, where Tush and Gurdos on his bidding wait. Gustim and Bahram all known to thee, and where is mighty Rostam, where is he? Look around with care, their names and power display, or instant death shall end thy vital day. Where yonder splendid tapestries extend, and o'er pavilions bright enfolding bend, a throne triumphal shines with sapphire rays, and golden suns upon the banners blaze. Full in the centre of the host and round the tent 100 elephants are bound. As if in pomp he mocks the power of fate, their royal coast holds his kingly estate. In yonder tent, which numerous guards protect, where front and rear illustrious chiefs collect, where horsemen wheeling seem prepared to fight, their golden armor glittering in the light. Tush lifts his banners, decked with royal pride, feared by the brave, his soldiers' friend and guide. That crimson tent where spearmen frowning stand, and steel-clad veterans form a threatening band, holds mighty Gurdos, famed for martial fire, of 80 valiant sons a valiant sire. Yet strong in arms he shuns inglorious ease, his lion banners floating in the breeze. But mark that green pavilion girt around by Persian nobles' speech the chief renowned. Furious on the standard worked with curious art, a hideous dragon writhing seems to start. Throned in his tent the warrior's form is seen, towering above the assembled host between. A generous horse before him snorts and neighs, the trembling earth the echoing sound conveys. Like him no champion ever met my eyes, no horse like that for majesty and size. What chief illustrious bears a port so high? Mark how his standard flickers through the sky. Thus ardent spoke Sohrab. Hujr dismayed paused ere reply the dangerous truth betrayed. Trembling for Rustam's life, the captive groaned. Basely his country's glorious boast disowned, and said the chief from China distant came. Sohrab abrupt demands the hero's name. The name unknown, grief wrings his aching heart, and yearning anguish speeds her venom dart. To him his mother gave the tokens true, he sees them all, and all mock his view. But gloomy fate descends in evil hour, can human wisdom bribe her favouring power? Yet gathering hope again with restless mien, he marks the chiefs who crowned the warlike scene, where numerous horses, heroes on foot appear, and brazen trumpets thrill the listening ear. Behold the proud pavilion of the brave, with wolves embossed the silken banners wave. The throne bright gems with radiant lustre glow, slaves ranked around the duteous homage bow. What mighty chieftain rules his cohorts there? His name and lineage free from guile declare. Guru, son of Gurros, long and glorious name, whose prowess even transcends his father's fame. Mark yonder tent of pure and dazzling white, whose rich brocade reflects the quivering light. An ebon seat surmounts the ivory throne, there frowns in state a warrior of renown. The crowding slaves his awful nod obey, and silver moons around his banners play. What chief or prince has grasped the hostile sword? Frapeurs, the son of Persia's mighty lord. Again, these standards show one champion more. Upon their center flames the savage boar. The saffron-hued pavilion bright ascends, whence many a fold of tasseled fringe depends. Who there presides? Good is the hero sprung, from whose praise exceeds the power of mortal tongue. Thus anxious he explored the crowded field, nor once the secret of his birth revealed. Heaven willed it so, pressed down by silent grief, surrounding objects promise no relief. This world to mortals still denies repose, and life is still the scene of many woes. Again his eyes instinctive turn descried the green pavilion and the warrior's pride. Again he cries, "Oh, tell his glorious name!" Yon gallant horse declares the hero's fame. But false Hujr, the expiring hope repelled, crushed the fond wish, the soothing balm withheld. And why should I conceal his name from thee? His name and title are unknown to me. Then thus Sohrab, in all that thou hast said, no sign of Rostam have thy words conveyed. Thou sayest he leads the Persian host to arms, with him has battle lost its boisterous charms. Of him no trace thy guiding hand has shown. Can power supreme remain unmarked, unknown? Perhaps return to Zabal's verdant bowers, he undisturbed enjoys his peaceful hours. The vernal banquets may constrain his stay, and rural sports invite prolonged delay. Ah, say not thus, the champion of the world, shrink from the kindling war with banners furled. It cannot be, say where his lightnings dart. Show me the warrior, all thou knowest impart. Treasures uncounted shall be thy reward, death changed to life, my friendship more than shared. Dost thou not know what in the royal ear the Mobid said, befitting kings to hear? Untold a secret is a jewel bright, yet profitless whilst hidden from the light. But when revealed in words distinctly given, it shines refulgent as the sun through heaven. Hujr evasive thus replies, through all the extended earth his glory flies. Whenever dangers round the nation close, Rustum approaches and repels its foes. And shouldst thou see him mix in mortal strife, thou think 'twere easier to escape with life from tiger fell or demon or the fold of the chafed dragon than his dreadful hold. When fierce battle close the fields with fire, before his rage embodies hosts retire. And when to him Hujr evasive thus replies, through all the extended earth his glory flies. Whenever dangers round the nation close, Rustum approaches and repels its foes. And shouldst thou see him mix in mortal strife, thou'dst think 'twere easier to escape with life from tiger fell or demon or the fold of the chafed dragon than his dreadful hold. Whence fiercest battle close the fields with fire, before his rage embodied hosts retire. And where didst thou, encountering armies, see why Rustum's praise so proudly urged to me? Let us but meet, and thou shalt trembling know how fierce that wrath which bids my bosom glow. If living flames express his boundless ire, o'erwhelming waters quench consuming fire, and deepest darkness glooms of tenfold night fly from the piercing beams of radiant light. Hujr shrunk back with undissembled dread, and thus communing with himself he said, Shall I, regardless of my country's guide, to Rustum's tent this furious homicide? Witness their destruction to our host, the bulwark of the land forever lost. What chief can then the Tartar power restrain? Kush dethroned, the mighty Rustum slain. Better 1,000 deaths should lay me low, than living yield such triumph to the foe. For in this struggle should my blood be shed, no foul dishonour can pursue me dead. No lasting shame my father's age oppress, whom 80 sons of martial courage bless. They for their brother slain incensed will rise, and pour their vengeance on my enemies. Then aloud he said, Can idle words avail? Why still of Rustum urge the frequent tale? Why for the elephant-bodied hero ask? Thee he will find no uncongenial task. Why seek pretences to destroy my life? Strike, for no Rustum views the unequal strife. Sohrab, confused, with hopeless anguish mourned. Back from the lofty walls he quickly returned, and stood amazed. Now war and vengeance claim, collected thought and deeds of mighty name. The jointed mail his vigorous body clasps, his sinewy hand the shining javelin grasps. Like a mad elephant he meets the foe, his steed a moving mountain deeply glow, his cheeks with passionate ardor as he flies, resistless onwards and with sparkling eyes. Full on the centre drives his daring horse, the yielding Persians fly his furious course, as the wild ass impetuous springs away when the fierce lion thunders on his prey. By every sign of strength and martial power they think him Rostam in his direst hour. Uncouched now his proud defiance falls, scornful to him the stripling warrior calls. And why art thou misnamed of royal strain? What work of thine befits the tented plain? This thirsty javelin seeks thy coward breast, thou and thy thousands doomed to endless rest. True to my oath, which time can never change, on thee, proud king, I hurl my just revenge. The blood of Zind inspires my burning hate, and direst resentment hurries on thy fate. Whom canst thou send to try the desperate strife? What valiant chief, regardless of his life? Where now can Frappers Toscu Gurdaus be? And the world-conquering Rustam, where is he? Reply from Persian lip ensued, then rushing on, with demon strength endued, Sohrab elate his javelin waved around, and hurled the bright pavilion to the ground. With horror coast wheels destruction nigh, and cries for Rustam's deeds needful succor fly. This frantic Turk triumphant on the plain withers the souls of all my warrior train. That is in Tus the mighty champion sought, and told the deeds the Tartar chief had wrought. 'Tis ever thus the brainless monarch do, shame and disaster still his steps pursue. This saying from the tent he soon descried, the wild confusion spreading far and wide, and settled Rakush whilst in deep dismay. Girgan incessant cried, Speed, speed away. Rahum bound on the mace, Tus promptly ran, and buckled on the broad Burgustuwan. Rustam meanwhile the thickening tumult hears, and in his heart, untouched by human fears, says, What is this that feeling seems to stun? This battle must be led by Ahriman. The awful day of doom must have begun. In haste he arms, and mounts his bounding steed. The growing rage demands redoubled speed. The leopard skin he o'er his shoulders throws, the regal girdle round his middle glows. High wave his glorious banners broad revealed, the pictured dragons glare along the field. Borne by Zubra, when the surprise he views, Sohrab endued with ample breast enthused. Like Sumsuar he beckons him apart, the youth advances with a gallant heart, willing to prove his adversary's might by single combat to decide the fight. And eagerly together brought he cries, Remote from us be foemen and allies, and though at once be either host surveyed, ours be the strife, which asks no mortal aid. Considerate viewed him up and o'er, so wondrous graceful was the form he bore, and frankly said, Experience flows with age, and many a foe has felt my conquering rage. Much have I seen, superior strength and art, have borne my spear through many a demon's heart. Only behold me on the battle plain, wait till thou seest this hand the warrior sustain. And if on thee should changeful fortune smile, thou needst not fear the monster of the Nile, but soft compassion melts my soul to save a youth so blooming with a mind so brave. The generous speech Sohrab attentive heard, his heart expanding glowed at every word. One question answer, and in answering show that truth should ever from a warrior flow. Art thou not Rustam, whose exploits sublime endear his name through every distant clime? I boast no station of exalted birth, no proud pretensions to distinguished worth. To him inferior, no such powers are mine. No offspring I of Nahram's glorious line. The prompt denial damped his filial joy. All hope at once forsook the warrior boy. His opening day of pleasure and the bloom of cherished life, immersed in the shadowy gloom. Perplexed with what his mother's words implied, a narrow space is now prepared aside for single combat with disdainful glance. Each boldly shakes his death-devoting lance, and rushes forward to the dubious fight. Thoughts high and brave their burning souls excite. Now sword to sword continuous strokes resound, till glittering fragments strew the dusty ground. Each grasps his massive club with added force, the folding mail is rent from either horse. It seemed as if the fearful day of doom had clothed in all its withering terrors come. Their shattered corselets yield defence no more. At length they breathe, defiled with dust and gore. Their gasping throats with parching thirst are dry. Gloomy and fierce they roll a lowering eye, and frown defiance, son and father driven to mortal strife. Are these the ways of heaven? The various swarms which boundless ocean breeds, the countless tribes which crop the flowery meads, all know their kind, but hapless man alone has no instinctive feeling for his own, compelled to pause by every eye surveyed. Rostam with shame his wearied strength betrayed, foiled by a youth in battle's mid-career, his groaning spirit almost sunk with fear. Recovering strength again they fiercely meet, again they struggle with redoubled heat. With bended bows they furious now contend, and feathered shafts in rattling showers descend. Thick as autumnal leaves they strew the plain, harmless their points and all their furies vain. And now they seize each other's girdle band. Rustum, who if he moved his iron hand could shake a mountain, and to whom a rock seemed as soft as wax, tried with one mighty stroke to hurl him thundering from his fiery steed. But fate forbids the gallant youth should bleed. Finding his wonted nerves relaxed, amazed, that hand he drops which never had been raised, uncrowned with victory even when demons fought, and pauses, wildered with despairing thought. Sohrab again springs with terrific grace, and lifts from saddle bow his ponderous mace. With gathered strength the quick descending blow wounds in its fall, and stuns the unwary foe. Then thus contemptuous, all thy power is gone, thy charger's strength exhausted as thy own. Thy bleeding wounds with pity I behold. O seek no more the combat of the bold. Rustum to this reproach made no reply, but stood confused meanwhile tumultuously. The legions closed with soul-appalling force, troop rushed on troop, o'erwhelming man and horse. Sohrab incensed, the Persian host engaged. Furious along the scattered lines he raged. Fierce as a wolf he rode on every side. The thirsty earth with streaming gore was dyed. Midst the Turanians then the champion sped, and like a tiger heaped fields with the dead. But when the monarch's danger struck his thought, returning swift the stripling youth he sought. Grieved to the soul the mighty champion viewed, his hand and mail with Persian blood imbrued, and thus exclaimed with lion voice, O say, why with the Persians dost thou war today? Why not with me alone decide to fight? Thou art like a wolf that seekest the fold by night. To this Sohrab his proud assent expressed, and Rustum answering thus the youth addressed. Night shadows now are thickening o'er the plain. The tomorrow's sun must see our strife again. In wrestling let us exert our might, he said, and eve's last glimmer sunk in night. Thus as the skies a deeper gloom displayed, the stripling's life was hastening into shade. The gallant heroes to their tents retired, the sweets of rest their wearied limbs required. Sohrab, delighted with his brave career, describes the fight in Human's anxious ear, tells how he forced unnumbered chiefs to yield, and stood himself the victor of the field. But let the morrow's dawn, he cried, arrive, and not one Persian shall the day survive. Meanwhile let wine its strengthening balm impart, and add new zeal to every drooping heart. The valiant Guy with Rostam pondering stood, and sad recalled the scene of death and blood. Grief and amazement heaved the frequent sigh, and almost froze the crimson current dry. Rustum, oppressed by Guy's desponding thought, amidst his chiefs the mournful monarch sought. To him he told Sohrab's tremendous sway, the dire misfortunes of this luckless day. Told with what grasping force he tried in vain to hurl the wondering stripling to the plain. The whispering zephyr might as well aspire to shake a mountain, such the strength and fire. But night came on, and by agreement we must meet again tomorrow. Who shall be victorious, heaven knows only, for by heaven victory or death to man is ever given. This said, the king, o'erwhelmed in deep despair, passed dread night in agony and prayer. The champion silent joined his bands at rest, and spurned at length despondence from his breast. Removed from all, he cheered Zuhra's heart, and nerved his soul to bear a trying part. Ere early morning gilds the ethereal plain, in martial order range my warrior train, and when I meet in all his glorious pride this valiant Turk whom late my rage defied, should fortune smiles my arduous task requite, bring them to share the triumph of my might. But should success the stripling's arm attend, and dire defeat and death my glory's end, to their loved homes my brave associates guide, let Bowery Zabel all their sorrows hide. Comfort my venerable father's heart, in gentlest words my heavy fate impart. The dreadful tidings to my mother bear, and soothe her anguish with the tenderest care. Say that the will of righteous heaven decreed, that thus in arms her mighty son should bleed. Enough of fame my various toils acquired, when warring demons bathed in blood expired. Were life prolonged 1,000 lingering years, death comes at last and ends our mortal fears. Grashasp and Psalm and Nachman the blessed, and bravest heroes who have ever blessed this fleeting world, were not endued with power to stay the march of fate one single hour. The world for them possessed no fixed abode, the path to death's cold regions must be trode. Then why lament the doom ordained for all? Thus Jemshid fell, and thus must Rustam fall. When the bright dawn proclaimed the rising day, and the warriors armed, impatient of delay, but first Sohrab his proud confederate nigh, thus wistful spoke as swelled the brooding sigh. Now mark my great antagonist in arms, his noble form my filial bosom warms. My mother's tokens shine conspicuous here, and all the proofs my heart demands appear. Sure this is Rustam whom my eyes engage. Shall I, O grief, provoke my father's rage? Offended nature then would curse my name, and shuddering nations echo with my shame. He ceased, then whom on, vain fantastic thought, oft have I been where Persia's champions fought. And thou hast heard what wonders he performed, when in his prime Mazindaran was stormed. That horse resembles Rustam's, it is true, but not so strong nor beautiful to view. Sohrab now buckles on his war attire, his heart all softness and his brain all fire. Around his lips such smiles benignant played, he seemed to greet a friend as thus he said, Here let us sit together on the plain, here social sit and from the fight refrain. Ask we from heaven forgiveness of the past, and bind our souls in friendship that may last. Ours be the feast, let us be warm and free, for powerful instinct draws me still to thee. Fain would my heart in bland affection join, then let thy generous ardour equal mine. And kindly say with whom I now contend, what name distinguished boasts my warrior friend? Thy name unfit for champion brave to hide, thy name so long sought, and still denied. Say, art thou Rustam, who I burn to know? Ingenious say, and cease to be my foe. Sternly the mighty champion cried, Away! Hence with thy wiles now practised to delay, the promised struggle resolute I claim. then cease to move me in active shame. Sohrab rejoined, Old man, thou wilt not hear the words of prudence uttered in thine ear. Then heaven look on. Preparing for the shock, each binds his charger to a neighboring rock, and girds his loins, and rubs his wrists, and tries their suppleness and force with angry eyes. And now they meet, now rise, and now descend, and strong and fierce their sinewy arms extend. Wrestling with all their strength they grasp and strain, and blood and sweat flow copious on the plain. Like raging elephants they furious close, commutual wounds are given, and wrenching blows. Sohrab now clasps his hands and forward springs, impatiently when round the champion clings, seizes his girdle belt with power to tear the very earth asunder in despair. Rostam defeated feels his nerves give way, and thundering falls. Sohrab bestrides his prey. Grim as the lion prowling through the wood, upon a wild ass springs and pants for blood. His lifted sword had lopped the gory head, but Rostam quick with crafty ardor said, One moment hold, what are our laws unknown? A chief may fight till he is twice o'erthrown. The second fall, his recreant blood is spilt. These are our laws, avoid the menace guilt. Proud of his strength and easily deceived, the wondering youth the artful tale believed, released his prey, and wild as wind or wave, neglecting all the prudence of the brave, turned from the place, nor once the strife renewed, but bounded o'er the plain and other cares pursued. As if all memory of the war had died, all thoughts of him with whom his strength was tried, who mourned confounded at the stripling's stay, went forth and heard the fortune of the day. Amazed to find the mighty Rostam freed, with deepest grief he wailed the luckless deed. What? Loose a raging lion from the snare, and let him growling hasten to his lair. Bethink thee well in war from this unwise. This thoughtless act with countless woes may rise. Never again suspect the final blow, nor trust the seeming weakness of a foe. Hence with complaint the dauntless youth replied, Tomorrow's contest shall his fate decide. When Rostam was released in altered mood, he sought the coolness of the murmured flood, there quenched his thirst and bathed his limbs and prayed, beseeching heaven to yield his strengthening aid. His pious prayer indulgent heaven approved, and growling strength through all his sinews moved, such as erewhile his towering structure knew, when his bold arm unconquered demons slew. Yet in his mien no confidence appeared, no ardent hope his wounded spirits cheered. Again they met, a glow of youthful grace diffused its radiance o'er the stripling's face. And when he saw, in renovated guise, the foe so lately mastered with surprise, he cried, What? Rescued from my power again, dost thou confront me on the battle plain? Or dost thou wearied draw thy vital breath, and seek from warrior bold the shaft of death? Truth has no charms for thee, old man, even now. Some further cheat may lurk upon thy brow. Twice have I shown thee mercy, twice thy age hath been thy safety, twice it soothed my rage. Then mild the champion, youth is proud and vain, the idle boast a warrior would disdain. This aged arm perhaps may yet control the wanton fury that inflames thy soul. Again dismounting, each the other viewed, with sullen glance and swift the fight renewed. Clenched front to front, again they tug and bend, twist their broad limbs as every nerve would rend. With rage convulsive Rustum grasps around, bends his strong back and hurls him to the ground. Him who had deemed the triumph all his own, but dubious of his power to keep him down. Like lightning quick he gives the deadly thrust, and spurns the stripling weltering in the dust. Thus as his blood the shining steel imbues, thine too shall flow when destiny pursues. For when she marks the victim of her power, 1,000 daggers speed the dying hour. Writhing with pain, Sohrab murmuring sighed, and thus to Rostam, Vaunt not in thy pride, upon myself the sorrow I have brought. thou but the instrument of fate which wrought my downfall. Thou art guiltless, guiltless quite. O had I seen my father in the fight, my glorious father, life will soon be o'er, and his great deeds enchant my soul no more. Of him my mother gave the mark and sign, for him I sought, and what an end is mine! My only wish on earth, my constant sigh, him to behold, and with that wish I die. But hope not to elude his piercing sight, in vain for thee the deepest glooms of night. Couldst thou through ocean's depths for refuge fly, or midst the starbeam track the upper sky, Rostam with vengeance armed would reach thee there, his soul the prey of anguish and despair. An icy horror chills the champion's heart, his brain whirls round with agonizing smart. O'er his wan cheek no gushing sorrows flow, senseless he sinks beneath the weight of woe. Relieved at length, with frenzied look he cries, "Prove thou art mine, confirm my doubting eyes, for I am Rustam." Piercing was the groan which burst from his torn heart, as wild and lone he gazed upon him. Dire amazement shook the dying youth, and mournful thus he spoke: "If thou art Rustam, cruel is thy part, no warmth paternal seems to fill thy heart. Else hadst thou known me when, with strong desire, I fondly claimed thee for my valiant sire. Now from thy body strip the shining mail, untie these bands ere life and feeling fail, and on my arm the direful proof behold, thy sacred bracelet of refulgent gold." When the loud brazen trumpets were heard afar, and echoing round proclaimed the pending war, whilst parting tears my mother's eyes o'erflowed, this mystic gift her bursting heart bestowed. "Take this," she said, "thy father's token wear, and promised glory will reward thy care. The hour is come, but fraught with bitterest woe, we meet in blood to wail at the fatal blow." The loosened mail unfolds the bracelet bright, unhappy gift to Rustam's wildered sight. Prostrate he falls: "By my unnatural hand, my son is slain, and from the land uprooted." Frantic in the dust his hair he rends in agony, in deep despair. The western sun has disappeared in gloom, and still the champion wept his cruel doom. My wondering legions marked the long delay, and seeking Rachash riderless astray, the rumor quick to Persia's monarch spread, and there described the mighty Rustam dead. Close alarmed, the fatal tiding hears, his bosom quivers with increasing fears. "Speed, speed, and see what has befallen today, to cause these groans and tears. What fatal fray? If he be lost, if breathless on the ground, and if this young warrior with the conquest crowned, then I must, humbled, from my kingdom torn, wander like Jamshid through the world forlorn." The army roused, restore the dusty plain, urged by the monarch to revenge the slain. Wild consternation saddened every face, Zeus, warned with horror, sought the final fatal place, and there beheld the agonizing sight, the murderous end of that natural fight. Sohrab, still breathing, hears the shrill alarms, his gentle speech suspends the clang of arms. "My light of life no fluttering sinks in shade, let vengeance sleep, and peaceful vows be made. Beseech the king to spare this Tartar host, for they are guiltless, all to them is lost. I led them on, their souls with glory fired, while mad ambition all my thoughts inspired. In search of thee the world before my eyes, war was my choice, and thou my sacred prize. With thee, my sire, in virtuous league combined, no tyrant king should persecute mankind. That hope is past, the storm has ceased to rave, my ripening honours wither in the grave. Then let no vengeance on my comrades fall, mine was the guilt, and mine the sorrow all. How often have I sought thee off my mind, figured to thee my sight or joy to find. My mother's token disappointment came, when thou denied thy lineage and name. Or still o'er thee my soul impassioned clung, still to my father fond affection clung. But fate remorseless all my hopes withstood, and stained thy reeking hands in kindred blood. His faltering breath protracted speech denied, still from his eyelids flowed a gushing tide. Through Rustam's soul redoubled horror ran, heart-rending thoughts subdued the mighty man. And now at last with joy illumined eye, the Zab of bands their glorious chiefs descry. But when they saw his pale and haggard look, knew from what mournful cause he gazed and shook. With downcast mien they mourned and wept aloud, while Rustam thus addressed the weeping crowd. Here ends the war, let gentle peace succeed. Enough of death, I have done the deed. Then to his brother, groaning deep, he said, Oh, what a curse upon a parent's head! But go, and to the Tartar say, no more, let war between us steep the earth with gore. Zevra flew, and wildly spoke his grief to crafty Haman, the Turanian chief, who with dissembled sorrow heard him tell the dismal tidings which he knew too well. And who, he said, has caused these tears to flow? Who but Hujur, he might have stayed the blow. But when Sohrab the father's banner sought, he still denied, and there that here champion fought. He spread the ruin, he the secret knew, hence should the crime receive the vengeance due. Zuhra frantic breathed in Rustam's ear the treachery of the captive chief Hujir, whose headless trunk had weltered on the strand, but prayers and force withheld the lifted hand. Then to his dying son the champion turned, remorseless more deep within his bosom burned. A burst of frenzy fired his throbbing brain. He clenched his sword, but found his fury vain. The Persian chiefs the desperate act repressed, and tried to calm the tumult in his breast. Thus Gurda spoke, Alas, wert thou to give thyself 1,000 wounds and cease to live, what would it be to him thou saw restore? It would not save one pang, then weep no more. For if removed by death, O say to whom has ever been vouchsafed a different doom? All are the prey of death, the crowned the low, and man through life the victim still of woe. Then Rustam, fly, and to the king relate the pressing horrors which involve my fate. And if the memory of my deeds are swayed, his mind, O supplicate his generous aid. A sovereign balm he has, whose wondrous power all wounds can heal and fleeting life restore. Swift from his tent the potion medicine bring, but mark the malice of the brainless king. Hard as the flinty rock he stern denies the healthful draught, and gloomily thus replies, Can I forgive his foul and slanderous tongue the sharp disdain on me contemptuous flung? Scorned amidst my army by a shameless boy, who sought my throne, my sceptre to destroy. Nothing but mischief from his heart can flow. Is it then wise to cherish such a foe? The fool who warms his enemy to life, who only prepares for scenes of future strife. Gurda's returning told the helpless tale, and thinking Rustam's presence might have it prevail. The champion rose, but ere he reached the throne, Sohrab had breathed his last expiring groan. Now keener anguish racked the father's mind, reft of his son, a murderer of his kind. His guilty sword disdained with filial gore. He beat his burning breast, his hair he tore. The breathless corpse before his shuddering view, a shower of ashes o'er his head he threw. In my old age, he cried, what have I done? Why have I slain my son, my innocent son? Why o'er his splendid dawning did I roll the clouds of death, and plunge my burdened soul in agony? My son from heroes sprung, better these hands were from my body wrung. And solitude and darkness deep and drear fold me from sight, then hated linger here. But when his mother hears with horror wild that I have shed the life blood of her child, so nobly brave, so dearly loved in vain, how can her heart that rending shock sustain? Now on a bier the Persian warriors place that breathless youth, and shade his pallid face, and turning from that fateful field away, move towards the champion's home in long array. Then Rostam, sick of martial pomp and show, himself the spring of all this scene of woe, doomed to the flames the pageantry he loved, shield, spear, and mace so often battle proved, now lost to all, encompassed by despair, his bright pavilion crackled blazing air. The sparkling throne the ascending column fed, in smoking fragments fell the golden bed. The raging fire red glimmered, died away, and all the warriors' pride in dust and ashes lay. Goes the king, now joins the mournful chief, and tries to soothe his deep and settled grief. For soon or late we yield our vital breath, and all our worldly troubles end in death. When first I saw him, graceful in his might, he looked far other than a Tartar knight. Wondering I gaze, now destiny has thrown him on thy sword, he fought and he has gone. And should even heaven against this earth be hurled, or fire enwrap in crackling flames the world, that which is past we never can restore, his soul has travelled to some happier shore. Alas, no good from sorrow canst thou reap, when then therefore thus in gloom and misery weep. But Rustam's mighty wars disdained his aid, his heart is drowned in grief, and thus he said, Yes, he is gone, to me forever lost. Oh, then protect his brave unguided host, from war removed in this detested place. Let them unharmed make their mountain wilds retrace. Bid them secure my brothers will obey, the careful guardian of their weary way, to where Jehun's distant waters stray. To this the king, my soul is sad to see thy hopeless grief, but since approved by thee, the war shall cease, though the Turanian band has spread dismay and terror through the land. The king appeased, no more with vengeance burned, the Tartar legions to their homes returned. The Persian warriors gathering round the dead, grovelled in the dust and tears of sorrow shed. Then back to loved Iran their steps the monarch led. But Rustam midst his native bands remained, and further rites of sacrifice maintained. 1,000 horses bled at his command, and torn drums were scattered o'er the sand. And now through Zabba's deep and bowery groves, in mournful pomp the sad procession moves. The chief mighty on foot precedes the bier, his warrior friends in grief assembled near. The dismal cadence rose upon the gale, and Zal astonished heard the piercing wail. He and his kindred joined the solemn train, hung round the bier, and wondering viewed the slain. There gaze and weep, the sorrowing father said, for there behold my glorious offspring dead. The hoary sire shrunk backwards with surprise, and tears of blood o'erflowed his aged eyes. And now the champion's rural palace gate receives the funeral group in gloomy state. Rudolph aloud bemoaned the stripling's doom, sweet flower all drooping in the hour of bloom. His tender youth in distant bowers had passed, sheltered at home he felt no withering blast. In the soft prison of his mother's arms, secure from danger all the world's alarms, O ruthless fortune, flushed with generous pride, he sought his sire, and thus unhappy died. Him again the sacred bier unclosed, again Sohrab to public view exposed. Husbands and wives and warriors old and young, struck with amaze, around the body hung, with garments rent and loosely flowing hair. Their shrieks and clamors filled the echoing air. Frequent they cried, thus solemn the champion slept, thus sleep Sohrab again, they groaned and wept. Now o'er the corpse a yellow robe is spread, the aloes bare is closed upon the dead. And to preserve the hapless hero's name, fragrant and fresh, that his unblemished fame might live and bloom through all succeeding days, a mount sepulchral on the spot they raise, formed like a charger's hoof in every ear. The story has been told, and many a tear shed at the side recital through Tehran, of Frashab's right realm and summit gone. Deep sunk the tidings, nuptial bower and bed, and all that promised happiness had fled. When Tamineh heard this tale of woe, think how a mother bore the mortal blow. Distracted, wild, she sprang from place to place, with frenzied hands deformed her beauteous face. The musky locks her polished temples crowned, fierce she tore and flung upon the ground. Starting in agony of grief, and she gazed, her swimming eyes to heaven imploring raised, and groaning cried, "Sole comfort of my life, doomed the sad victim of unnatural strife. Where art thou now with dust and blood defiled, thou darling boy, my lost, my murdered child? When wert thou gone? How night and lingering day thy fond mother watch and time away? For hope so pictured all I wished to see, thy father found, and thou returned to me. Yes, thou exulting in thy father's fame, and yet nor sire, nor son, nor tidings came. How could I dream of this? Ye met, but how? That noble aspect, that ingenuous brow, moved not a nerve in him. Ye met to part. Alas, the lifeblood issuing from the heart. Short was the day which gave to me the delight. Soon succeeds a long and dismal night. Whom shall now devolve my tender care? Whom loved like thee my bosom sorrows share? Whom shall I take to fill thy vacant place? To whom extend a mother's soft embrace? Sad fate, for one so young, so fair, so brave, seeking thy father's sorrows to find a grave. These arms no more shall hold thee to my breast, no more with thee my soul be doubly blessed. No drowned in blood thy lifeless body lies, forever torn from these desiring eyes, friendless alone, beneath a foreign sky. Thy male death clothes, and thy father by. Why did not I conduct thee on the way, and point where Rostam's bright pavilion lay? Thou hadst the tokens, why didst thou withhold those dear remembrances, that pledge of gold? Hadst thou the bracelet to his view restored, thy precious blood had never stained his sword. Long emotion choked her panting breath, her veins seemed withered by the cold of death. The trembling matrons hastened round her mourned, with piercing cries till fluttering life returned. Then gazing up distraught she wept again, and frantic seeing midst her pitying train the favoured steed, no more than ever dear, the hoof she kissed and bathed with many a tear. Clasping the male Sohrab in battle war, with burning lips she kissed it o'er and o'er. His martial robes she in her arms compressed, and like an infant strained them to her breast. The reins, the trappings, club and spear were brought, the sword and shield with which the stripling fought. These she embraced with melancholy joy, in sad remembrance of her darling boy. And still she beat her face, and o'er them hung, as in a trance, or to them wildly clung. Day after day she thus indulged her grief, night after night disdaining all relief. At length worn out from earthly anguish riven, the mother's spirit joined her child in heaven. Now as a bonus you'll hear Ferdowsi's satire on Mahmud, also translated by James Atkinson. No tyrant as thou art, this earthly state is not eternal, but of transient date. Fear God then, and afflict not humankind. To merit heaven be thou to heaven resigned. Afflict not a ant, though weak and small, it breathes and lives, and life is sweet to all. Knowing my temper firm and stern and bold, didst thou not, tyrant, tremble to behold my sword blood dropping? Hadst thou not the sense to shrink from giving man like me offence? What could impel thee to an act so base? What but to earn and prove thy own disgrace? Why was I sentenced to be trod upon, and crushed to death by elephants, by one whose power I scorn? Couldst thou presume that I would be appalled by thee whom I defy? I am the lion, I inured to blood, and make the impious and the base my food. And I could grind thy limbs and spread them far, as Nile's dark waters their richest treasures bear. Fear thee, I fear not man, but God alone. I only bow to his almighty throne. Inspired by him my ready numbers flow. Guarded by him I dread no earthly foe. Thus in the pride of song I pass my days, offering to heaven my gratitude and praise, from every trace of sense and feeling free. When thou art dead, what will become of thee? If thou shouldst tear me limb from limb and cast my dust and ashes to the angry blest, Ferdowsi still would live, since on thy name, Mahmud, I did not rest my hopes of fame. In the bright page of my heroic song, but on the God of heaven, to whom I belong, boundless thanksgivings, and on him whose love supports the faithful in the realms above, the mighty prophet, none who are reposed, on him existence without hope has closed. And thou wouldst hurl me underneath the tread of the wild elephant till I were dead. Dead by that insult roused, should I become an elephant in power and seal thy doom. Mahmud, if fear of man hath never awed thy heart, at least fear thy Creator God. Full many a warrior of illustrious worth, full many of humble and imperial birth, Shulim, Jemshid, Minachir the brave, have died for nothing, had the power to save these mighty monarchs from the common doom. They died, but blessed in memory they bloom. Thus kings to perish, none on earth remain, still all things human seek the dust again. O had thy father graced a kingly throne, thy mother been for royal virtues known, a different fate the poet then had shared. Honours and wealth had been his just reward. But how remote from thee a glorious line, no high ennobling ancestry is thine. From a vile stock thy bold career began, a blacksmith was thy sire from Isfahan. Alas, from vice can goodness ever spring? Is mercy hoped for in a tyrant king? Can water wash the Ethiopian white? Can we remove the darkness from the night? The tree to which a bitter fruit is given would still be bitter in the bowers of heaven, and a bad heart keeps on its vicious course, or if it changes, changes for the worse. While streams of milk where Eden's flowers blow acquire more honeyed sweetness as they flow, the reckless king who grinds the poor like thee must ever be consigned to infamy. Now mark Ferdowsi's strain, his book of kings will ever soar upon triumphant wings. All who have listened to its various lore rejoice, the wise grow wiser than before. Heroes of other times, of ancient days, forever flourish in my sounding lays. Have I not sung of Kus, Tus, and Gu, of matchless Rostam, faithful still and true, of the great demon Binder who could throw his gaman to the heavens and seize the foe, of Hushang Ferdun and Somsawar, Dochrasp, Kai Khosrow, and Ishfetyar, Gustasp, Artyasp, and a him of mighty name, great daughters of with 80 sons of martial fame. The toil of 30 years now is complete, record sublime of many a warlike feat, written midst the toil and trouble, but the strain awakens every heart and will remain a lasting stimulus to glorious deeds, for even the bashful maid who kindling reads becomes a warrior. 30 years of care, urged on by royal promise, did I bear, and now deceived and scorned the aged bard is basely cheated of his pledged reward.